Hello, everyone. Right, well, we're going to adjust this a little bit. I wasn't in the rain, so kind of my improv isn't that good. Hello. Well, welcome, everyone, and thank you very, very much for coming along today. A couple of things. Please make yourself comfortable. I don't think it will go any longer for an hour. As much as this is big font, don't worry about that. So a couple of housekeeping items, and I'm going to check myself. Can you just make sure your cell phones mobile phones are on silent, please? I appreciate, obviously, people might have to take calls, so if they do, then obviously I just invite you just to sort of move away from the dedication. Secondly, since last year, this area is now in the ultra-low emission zone, which operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a year, or 7 days a week. So if you've got a diesel vehicle, you might want to just check to make sure that you're not liable for a £12.50 charge, because I can't afford it. I'm just an old police pensioner. Now, we do have some badges, and I'm quite comfortable if anybody hasn't got a badge. These were modelled on the original London branch of American Civil War veteran badges they created about 1910. Please see my mum if you haven't got one. And if you don't want to wear it now, then obviously it's with you in spirit, and you can wear it towards the end of the cemetery. But obviously, as part of the experience, we'd all invite you to please take one. Daz has got orders of service if you would like one. And again, if you don't get to see it now, then you can take one away with you. Sorry. So firstly, I'd like to thank Sean Holloway and his team at the cemetery have helped with the placement of this burial marker. There's Sean at the back, and I'm going to point my finger at him because he's a shining light in the terms of getting these headstones, and he sort of moves heaven and literally earth to make it happen. So he was responsible for placing the headstone for my great-great-grandfather George Denham last year, and it was 51 weeks ago that at the conclusion of his dedication I said to be continued, and here we are again honouring the service of another American Civil War veteran. So in the last year, as an outcome of last year's ceremony and the realisation that so many other veterans of the conflict buried in the UK who deserve some form of remembrance, monuments for UK veterans of the American Civil War Association was formed by myself and Darren, who stood over there, and we're a formally constituted association, and our aim is to honour the lives and service of American Civil War veterans digitally through online platforms and physically like today. And I think the ethos of our approach to this replicates that of Grand Army of the Republic, sons and daughters of Union veterans of the Civil War. It's really a spirit of collaboration. So, the mantra to be continued very much characterises our work, and we're already in the early stages of securing a burial marker for another 111 Pennsylvanian who's buried in London. And ultimately, we hope to secure through funding donations to obtain one single monument that honours all veterans. And there's a QR code on the back of the order of service that will take you to a link that explains all. So I'm excited that we've already raised £1,500 towards such a monument, and since January we've identified over 500 veterans, and the list grows, illustrating that a single monument seems a fitting objective. So I want to thank you all for coming to honour and remember the life of James O'Neill. We have representatives from the United States Government, Her Worship the Mayor of Islington, Councillor Marion Spall, Islington Local History Society, the American Civil War Roundtable UK, the Southern Skirmish Association, and Lawrence Smith, the great-grandson of Ensign John Davis, who was also the sons of Union veterans of the American Civil War namesake. My mother, Barbara, in the pink, is representing the Oscar and Molly Mott Camp 1 of Elkhart, Indiana. Women's Relief Corps, and we're quite proud that we are the first people outside the North America to actually be part of the Women's Relief Corps, so it's kind of groundbreaking. And as well as the Elizabeth and Lou Detached 10, daughters of the Union veterans of the American Civil War. So the ripples of the event that we are all involved with today reach far across the Atlantic. We have friends in the United States who, whilst they cannot attend, are here in spirit, and this includes Michael Paquette, the Commander-in-Chief of the Sons of the Union Veterans of the Civil War, who said, "Unfortunately, I have another engagement in the time frame of your ceremony on the 23rd of July, but I sincerely thank you and the Monuments for UK Veterans of the American Civil War Association for your efforts to ensure that US Civil War veterans are remembered. I do hope one day in a not too distant future to visit England and see the memorials that your organisation and my Sons of Union Veterans of the Civil War brothers have been involved with." So before we unveil James's official burial marker, I would like to tell you a little bit about his life, because obviously we're gathered here to pay our homage to him. So James, whose name in the Civil War is possibly James Neal, was born in Clerkenwell, London in the early 1830s. In his pension application, he stated he thought he was born about June 1831, but he was unable to obtain his baptism records. So as a young man, he made his way to Halifax, Nova Scotia, and thereafter made his way to the United States and the state of Massachusetts, where he decided to join the Union Army at the Provost Marshal's office in Hanover Street, Boston. Now, at the time, he was 32 years of age, and he gave his employment as a labourer, and he enlisted in the name of James Neal on January 21st, 1865. So he served in Company K, the 61st Massachusetts Infantry, as a private, and he received a bounty, apparently, of $33. Now, there are no pictures that we found, but just imagine, if you will, a man. He had brown eyes, dark hair, dark complexion, and stood at about 5'3" tall. So initially he was on Provost Guard duty at General Grant's headquarters at City Point, Virginia in March 1865. And then on March the 28th, James and his company were then ordered to the front in the last 8 days of the siege of Petersburg, Virginia. And he participated in the battle which drove the Confederates out of Fort Mahone. His colleagues within his regiment lost 5 comrades, and 30 of the men were wounded. And they held the position assigned to guard Confederate prisoners of war until the surrender on April 9th. James then did guard duty in the area where the surrendered Confederate army was being dismantled, and after which he was sent to Washington, D.C. to take part in the Grand Victory Review on May the 23rd. He was present throughout duty during all Company K's deployments, and he mustered out of the Union Army at Washington, D.C. on July the 16th, 1865 at the State House in Boston. Upon return to England, he lived in Lilly Street, Saffron Hill, which is not too far from here in the borough of Camden, which is about 7 miles south of this cemetery. And at the turn of the century, he was resident in Islington workhouse when it was discovered that he was entitled to a pension from the American government. And it seems he applied for it in about 1902, but it wasn't really confirmed until 5 years later. James, like many other veterans, like my great-great-grandfather and Ensign John Davis, really had a battle with the Pension Bureau in Washington, D.C. to obtain their pension at the conclusion of their service. But it is these pension files that shed light on their life. So in 1903, under medical examination, James was described as having rheumatism, heart disease, and was incapacitated through paralysis. He was paralysed. Now, in due course, he apparently left for the United States, and he had £42 and went back to Boston. And he stated in some correspondence that he thought he would like to see England again, and he returned with a good sum of money in his possession, which he apparently lost on arrival, and he sought shelter at the workhouse. James spent some time as a resident of Islington Workhouse, and he was living there on the 23rd of July 1907 when he made continued efforts to get his pension. However, several months later he returned once again to the United States via Liverpool docks on the SS Carmania, and that was in October 1907. And at the time, oddly, he did give his occupation as USA pensioner. In November 1907, he was resident of the Soldiers' Home, Chelsea, in Suffolk County, Massachusetts. Now, James had no known family listed on his pension application. We do not know the name of his parents or siblings or anything about his earlier life. In 1908, he did return to England, and he was living at number 12 Gordon Place, Highgate Hill in London. Now, he did eventually receive his pension, but he really did have little time to enjoy its benefits. James died of senile decay at Islington Workhouse, St John's Road, on the 27th of September 1909. He had no family to witness his passing, and the informant, when registering his death, was H. Jackson, the deputy master at the workhouse. Thanks, Greg. James was buried at this spot 3 days later, on the 30th of September 1909. We will never know if he was afforded any formal act of remembrance concerning his life and service to the United States. Feels like a travesty, but just over a year later, on the 20th of September 1910, the London branch of American Civil War veterans was inaugurated. And it's important to say that the replica that we've created of the original London branch banner is here today. So James wouldn't have enjoyed having that honour bestowed upon him. So we are here today to address that, what feels like an injustice to me. The London branch of American Civil War veterans sought to help each other in perhaps ways others could not. At their meetings, they offered comradeship, fraternising, fellowship, campfire tales, lower deck yarns and jabbering. As a collective, they would help destitute peers with financial and emotional support. And an important outcome of their formation were the ceremonies that they engaged in once one of their veteran comrades had passed away. And in some respects, we are replicating that today. The London branch considered the rituals of mourning as an important part of remembrance. They even produced a memorial card informing the members that one of their comrades had passed away, inviting attendance at the interment where badges, very much like the ones you are wearing today, were worn. The values and beliefs seemed to replicate that of their peers in the Grand Army of the Republic in the United States. And according to John A. Logan, its Commander-in-Chief, the Grand Army of the Republic were organised to preserve and strengthen fraternal feelings which bound together the soldiers, sailors and marines who united to suppress the rebellion that resulted in the conflict. We do not know if James was a member of the Grand Army of the Republic, but we are convinced that his views on remembrance, as well as that of the London branch of American Civil War veterans concerning their rituals of mourning for their fallen comrades, would apply to him. We know examples of such acts occurred. So according to the American Register, Sunday the 13th of April 1913, nearly 20 survivors of the American Civil War, now living in different parts of London, were present at the funeral of John Kreitzer, one of their old comrades who for nearly 30 years had been in the service of Tottenham District Council. They fought on the north side of the war, some of them being officers, and most of them wore their war medals. One of the numbers carried a banner with the Stars and Stripes. The Nottingham Evening Post reported another occasion where 20 London branch veterans attended a funeral in South London of 81-year-old Bella MacDonald. Bella had been born in Canvas after serving with the 130th Indiana Infantry. He moved to London due to family ties, and the London branch, driven by the passion of John Davis, whose great-grandson is here today, may have been small in number, but it never diminished their ability for peer support and acts of remembrance. Like James, those members of the London branch have long passed away. Therefore, as we stand and sit here today, we take forward their baton of remembrance. The flame that ignited their work can continue to grow, fueled by our fellowship today. I invite you to consider that consciously or unconsciously, you are in fact continuing the ethos of the London branch and the Grand Army of the Republic by honouring and remembering one man who served the United States. Because James does not have any known living relative, we are his psychological family, offering a small act of homage to his life and service. We, his family, for just one day, will shortly observe the unveiling of a memorial that illustrates his life has not been forgotten, not by us, nor the once grateful nation under which flag he once served, and whose Department of Veteran Affairs kindly donated this burial marker. And in our act of remembrance today, I ask you to consider that James is not entirely alone as a former patriot who served the United States in times of need. He is one of 9 known veterans interred at this cemetery, and I'd like to briefly acknowledge them and their service. Some were London branch of American Civil War veterans. Henry Sissons Blackburn, Company K, 2nd Pennsylvania Infantry, died 1905. George Denham, my great-great-grandfather, London branch member, number 8, Company F, Pennsylvania Volunteers, and the USS Chickasaw, died 1914. Charles Dillon, Company E, 17th US Infantry, post-Civil War service, died 1921. John Dingwall, 15 Massachusetts Light Infantry, died 1895. Elijah Franklin, London branch member 38, USS North Carolina, Lancaster and Princeton, died 1912. Arthur Fisher, United States Marine Corps, killed in Vietnam in 1970. William Henschel, Company C, 19th Wisconsin Infantry, died 1907. James McNabb, Company M, the 2nd Massachusetts Heavy Artillery, died 1919. And finally, James Shrewsbury, the London branch member 30, USS Columbus. He served in the Mexican-American War of 1846 to 1848. He died in 1914. It is fitting that we remember these long-departed men, but I would like to conclude by reading to you a passage from Grand Army of the Republic's General Orders number 11, written by John A. Logan on May the 5th, 1868. It concerns cherishing the memory of dead comrades who had once served to defend the United States. And I quote, "Their soldiers' lives were the reveille of freedom to a race in chains, and their deaths the tattoo of rebellious tyranny in arms. We should guard their graves with sacred vigilance. All that the consecrated wealth and taste of the nation can add to their endowment and security is but a fitting tribute to the memory of her slain defenders. Let no wanton foot tread rudely on such hallowed grounds. Let pleasant paths invite the coming and going of reverent visitors and fond mourners. Let no vandalism of avarice or neglect, no ravages of time testify to the present or to the coming generations that we have forgotten, as a people, the cost of a free and undivided republic. If other eyes grow dull and other hands slack and other hearts cold in the solemn trust, ours shall keep it well as long as the light and warmth of life remains in us. Let us then, at the time appointed, gather round their sacred remains and garland the passionless mounds above them with the choicest flags of springtime. Let us raise above them the dear old flag they saved from dishonour. James, as we gather here under this dear old flag, I say to you, I have not forgotten the price that you paid to secure a free and undivided republic. And I say, James, thank you for your service. Thank you for listening. So before I invite them to speak, I'd like to invite the Worshipful Mayor of Islington, Councillor Marion School, and Brian Davidson, the Operations Assistant Defence Attaché Office, United States Embassy, to unveil James's burial marker. And so please be mindful of any tripping hazards. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I would like to now invite Brian Davidson to come and speak, if that's possible. Sorry, I was going to invite the mayor. Sorry, I read it out. Sorry, I apologise. Do you want me to bring the mic down to you?
Thank you. I would just like to start by highlighting the rich diversity and history that exists within the borough of Islington, and that many of its residents who died in poverty often still had a story to tell, as is the case with James O'Neill. He served in an army that liberated people from slavery, yet his life was almost forgotten. Had it not been for the acquisition of a headstone and research concerning his service. Thank you.
So I would now like to invite Brian. Do you need the mic or?
I think if I'm loud enough, can you hear me? Yes. All right, I'll just speak loudly.
Thank you.
If I have to raise my voice too much, I may slip back into sergeant speak and let something slip. If that happens, please forgive me, but I'll try to keep it clean and ambassadorial here, acting as a representative. First of all, thank you very much for allowing me to speak today. I was flattered and honored to be here about a year ago when we rededicated the grave of George Denham, and it's heartening to me to find out that it wasn't so bad that you invited me back. Thank you so much. The opportunity to stand again with all of you esteemed people here to pay tribute to a man who left his country to fight for the integrity of my country is truly a great honor, and I appreciate that. I was not raised in a military family. I'm not a military brat by heart. I had, growing up, I considered it a few times joining in, but never actually pulled the trigger, if you'll forgive the pun, until our country was attacked on September 11th. And when that happened, at that point in my life, I decided it was time to put in and try to put a stop to this madness. So I raised my right hand and swore into the Army. I left a successful career in the blossoming world of .coms. Maybe I should put blossoming in quotations because that may have been a good career move for me, and shipped off to basic training with a bunch of kids and a bunch of drill sergeants who were younger than I was. I celebrated my 32nd birthday in basic training, and by celebrated I mean I furiously worked on keeping it hidden so that no one in basic training would know that it was my birthday on that day, because I'm not stupid. I knew what would happen. Right. So when I was reading the material that Gina sent out and saw that he enlisted while he was 32 years old, I felt a real empathy with that because I knew what that was like, right? We don't know the reason that James signed the paper. We don't have that historic to us, but we can guess that it probably was not for the same reason that a lot of young men sign up for the Army. Young people sign up to serve their country, to prove how manly they are. Let's face it, sometimes they sign up to impress girls. That probably wasn't the case at 32. At that point, old men go to war with their eyes open. And yes, 30s is old in the Army terms. I know it's not old looking at it from this side of it, but it's not a healthy young time to go play the young man's game. I don't believe that James went to fight in another country's war in a burst of youthful idealism and swagger, not at 32 years of age. I'm not trying to judge his motives or evaluate him. Whatever reason he had for signing that paper, he chose to fight against oppression, and he served honorably. Gina described the trials that James underwent in his short stint in the Army, and if you've never stomped around in combat boots, you probably looked at that and went, guard duty, wow, big deal. What's the deal with that? If you've served time in the military, you probably, like me, went, wow, 2 back-to-back stints of guard duty, how did he survive? If I had deployed twice to a foreign country and been put on guard duty the entire time, I probably still would not be standing here in this uniform, because that is some miserable work. Not a good time at all. So he got stuck on guard detail twice, stayed with it. I was not surprised when I heard that he got out of the Army very shortly after that. Well, I probably would have too. Sadly, I was also not surprised when I saw the struggles that he had to get the support that he was owed due to his service in the Army. We as a nation and we as a society often drop the ball when it comes to taking care of those people who have served honorably. And I'm not just saying that because that will be me in a few years and trying to stoke the fire or anything. We historically have also not done people the service that they deserve after they serve our respective countries. So it's both disgusting and very remnant of the way that soldiers are treated today. The state of disrepair that James's grave had fallen into was kind of a sad reminder of that exact situation. But the fact that now we've come back in, restored the grave, spent some time discussing his history, brings hope. Right? That is a great pride in my life to see that this has happened right now. James O'Neill served my country honorably, and in his later years he finally got the pension that he earned, and now he's finally going to get the memorial stone he deserves and the honor that he deserved for doing it. So thank each and every one of you guys for the part you had played in making this happen, no matter how small it was. It was appreciated by my country. If you'll give me just a moment, I'd like to say thanks to James for the job he did.
Thank you. So, yeah, I'd like to invite Martin Cross up now. Martin, sorry, I'm just going to hold off on that, Martin, because we're going to invite people to place some tributes if they wish. But I believe that did you want to speak? Did anybody else want to speak at the moment? You're going to do it towards the end. Okay. So if there are people who would like to place a tribute or a wreath, we'll do that now. And then at the conclusion of which I'll invite Martin to come and say a prayer. Whilst people are laying the wreaths, I'll explain a little bit about the history of this prayer. It came from a booklet called A Souvenir, and it was written in 1912 by the London Branch of American Civil War veterans, and we think the author of it was Ensign John Davis. So, yeah, please lay your wreaths if you have one. That's fine. That's all right, Molly. Sorry, Commander-in-Chief. So I will invite Martin to come and say a short prayer. Martin's a Civil War living historian. He's been a member of the American Civil War Society for nearly 30 years. He's also a Baptist preacher in training or concluded? It's a long piece of work, this training. And he now portrays a uniformed Union Army chaplain. Do you need the... Okay, so he's got two prayers. So do you need the mic or your...
No, I think I'm quite capable of raising my voice to a congregation. Thank you. There's one phrase which I've actually looked through the Book of Common Prayer. There's a phrase which our brother here definitely reflects, and that's that we brought nothing into this world, and we take nothing out of it. And until very recently, there was nothing here, even to mark his passing. So I think we need to be grateful to Gina that she has done this for us. And as an American Civil War reenactor, we're often asked, why do we do the American Civil War? We had enough wars of our own. Well, here is one example of a connection between us and our cousins across the Atlantic. I know of 7 now on this very field who fought in that war, and we know of over 1,000, I believe 1,500, who have known us to return here. But there are many ex-compatriots who went over there and never returned. Either stayed there or died there. So it's good to remember that some of them did come home, and we have to pay our respects to them. And we often think of death as something final. I mean, I like to say at a funeral, when I go to a funeral, not goodbye, but to use a foreign language, auf Wiedersehen, or au revoir, until we meet again. Because I've been reminded of a passage that Paul wrote in his letter to Thessalonica. I wish to share that with you now. But I would have you not be ignorant, brethren, concerning them which are asleep, that you sorrow not, even as others which have no home. For if we believe that Jesus died and rose again, even so, them also which sleep in Jesus with God will be with him. For this we say unto you by the word of the Lord, that we which are alive and remain unto the coming of the Lord shall not prevent them which are asleep. For the Lord himself shall descend from heaven with the voice of the archangel and with the trump of God, and that the dead in Christ shall rise. Then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them into the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and so we shall ever be with the Lord. So there will come a time and a place which we're told about where there will be no more sorrow, no more tears, no more sickness, and no more death, where we will all be together and alongside our brother James here. So this is entitled in loving memory of our dear comrade. Once more the dear old flag is draped, once more the call has come. Another dear comrade has passed away. O God, thy will be done. He has passed beyond the picket lines where the captain says ne'er retreat, where pain and sorrow are all forgot in one long peaceful sleep. Sleep on, you grand old boy in blue, your battles are all o'er. No booming guns or sinking ships will disturb you evermore. Sleep on in heavenly peace, sleep on, old comrade, loved by all. You have passed the guard and won the crown, you have answered your last call. Now, dear comrade, our call is clear, our day is near at hand. Oh, don't delay, get ready I pray, and we'll meet in the heavenly land.
So, honored guests, we're nearly at the conclusion of our dedication, and whilst we do not have the benefit of a bugler this year to honour the closing of our service, I've taken a leaf out of the Marines book and improvised, adapted and overcome, and so I've got a memory stick, and I hope that doesn't diminish the experience. So that brings our dedication part of this event to a conclusion. I know Darren wanted to come and speak briefly.
So anyway, hello everyone. I'm Daz. You might have seen me on social media because I spend half my life on it at the moment. But I want to thank you all for coming firstly. But the first thing we need to do is we need to thank Barbara and we need to thank Gina, because without their hard work over the last 18 years, we're not standing here today. You know, those guys are the reason we're all here basically, and that was all that hard work with them. So big thank you to you guys. So, I'm a reenactor, historian, and I was at reenactment last July, and I was told about Gina, I was told about George's story, and that there was going to be a dedication. Now, for me as a historian, I didn't think I'd ever have the opportunity to ever attend a real American Civil War veterans dedication, let alone two, you know. And so it was something I was not going to miss. So again, I would have laughed, you know, I would have said, no way. So, wow, amazing, you know. As you're aware, me and Gina have formed the Monuments for UK Veterans of the American Civil War Association, and today is just the start of our work. I almost feel like my role on Earth, I was put here for this reason, you know, to carry on these people's stories. And as Gina has said, James dies a year before the London branch of Civil War Veterans is formed, so he misses out on the pension. He's not on the form because he misses out on it. And maybe if they had, formed it a year before, maybe he wouldn't have died in this workhouse. Penniless, alone, forgotten. But he's not forgotten because we're here today. And all I'm going to say is, we are here to carry on that story of all of these Civil War veterans for many generations to come. And that is the point of us. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Some of the friendships that I've made through my interest in living history and history in terms of, say, for example, World War II, were born in Normandy probably about 2005, and we used to go to dedications there to the American and Commonwealth British soldiers who had fallen in that part of the conflict. And we met a lot of people who from mainland Europe who shared similar interests. An important part of gathering and being James's family for a day is, I would invite you, if you have time, there is a red brick building down the end of Ligo Road. Sean has kindly turned a blind eye. And I'd invite you all, if you wish to, I'll have to drive my pickup down there to share a glass of non-alcoholic friendship with us, just to share an experience together. But it isn't just standing here by his graveside, but it's about coming together and being actually very human and recognising that ultimately where James is, we will go. And, you know, living our best life, living authentically. And I personally think acts of remembrance are an important part of living. So if you wish, I appreciate that some people cannot stay around, but if you wish to do so, if you want to make your way down there by foot or by car to the red brick building, and we'll set up down there. I think Daz is going to lead the way, and I'll drive down with the glasses of friendship. So, so that's it. Thank you all for coming. I personally, you know, each one of you, as I say, are James's family for one day. I personally feel that the spirit and drive and passion of Ensign John Davis is now kind of very present within you, and to have one of his family members here today is really an absolute privilege for me, that we are taking the baton from those old London branch veterans, picking it up and moving forward, as Daz said. So thank you, everyone. Thank you.